All right. We're here with offensive lineman Derek Dennis. He played in the NFL. He played in the CFL, and particularly he's played in the XFL. What people might not know about it, the XFL fans might not know about him. He's a three-time All-Star, 2018 Grey Cup champion, was part of many awards throughout your career in the CFL. So thanks for being on the show.
Man, I appreciate you having me on, Mark. Thanks.
Sure. So I always ask my guests, what's their superhero origin story? So how did you get from kid in high school all the way to playing in not only the NFL, but the CFL and XFL as well?
Essentially, my origin story started like most, football guys, especially bigger guys. I grew up in New York City. Originally from Queens, New York. If you can't tell by the shirt,
Okay, I'm from
Queens,
Long
New York.
Island, so we got a little
Okay,
New York connection there.
yeah. So I'm originally born and raised in Queens, New York. Bounced around New York. My parents finally decided to move outside the city, north into like Westchester, Dutchess County, those areas. So that's where I spent the majority of my high school years. I attended the same high school as Elton Brand. So Elton Brand's big basketball star, come out of New York. I went to the same high school as him. And I pretty much grew up playing basketball. So, I mean, my first love, my first sport has always been basketball. As you know, growing up in New York, man, it's basketball courts on every corner, right? But it's not too many football fields. So football's not a real big sport in the state of New York, especially in that southern part of New York. So, I always grew up a basketball player. I always thought I was going to be the next Charles Barkley or something like that, right? So
Charles Oakley, if you're going with the New York Knicks.
yeah, Charles Oakley. Actually, you know what? One of my big influences growing up was Ron Artest. Ron Artest is a fellow Queens native.
Oh, yeah.
And
St. John's.
people used to always compare me to him.
Oh, really?
Growing up, yeah, people used to compare me to him and Anthony Mason, those type
Oh,
of players, right?
yep.
So, those were the guys I kind of modeled myself after playing the game of basketball. So, I kind of just thought I was, go on to play basketball, play pro sports. The dream was always NBA. I was a big Shaq fan growing up too. So that's really like my origin story. Is I started playing basketball, and I remember AAU coach I was playing for a very popular AAU team in New York. He coached football at a local Catholic high school. It was named Holy Cross in Queens, New York. So I remember one day we was at basketball practice, and he asked me. He was like, "Hey, Derek, do you play football?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I just played this past season in high school just for fun, just to kind of pass the time to see how things went." And he was like, "Yeah, just give me some film and just so I could take a look at you, see what you look like, right?" And I ended up playing Holy Cross that season in basketball. So what he did was he took a mashup of my basketball clips. He took a mashup of the football tapes. I gave him like 3 games. He made a highlight tape out of it and it sent it out to schools, unbeknownst to me. I had no clue. And then next thing I know, I started getting recruiting letters from like Penn State, Boston College, University of Virginia for football. And I'm like, football? I don't even really like play football for real. Like, how are they recruiting me for football? And that's essentially kind of like how I started my ascension into playing football. I ended up, leaving my high school, going to prep school. My prep school coach kind of basically talked me into not wanting to pursue basketball in college, but pursue football. And then I ended up at Temple University, and rest is history.
Gotcha. Now, was PJ Walker at Temple? No.
PJ was way after me, so I'm
Okay.
I'm more like the old head to PJ. Like that's little bro, man. I have a great relationship with him. He's a good dude, man. I'm super proud of him and what he's doing in his career. But he was like maybe 5-6 years after me.
Oh, okay. And then so you played at Temple, and then how did you make your way into the NFL?
Basically, man, I had a good career at Temple. Started as a freshman. I went into Temple thinking I was going to be a D lineman or a tight end because that's what I played in high school.
Okay.
And they basically told me like, yeah, you're going to play offensive line. So I was like, I don't play offensive line. Like I never had no previous knowledge to it. And they just had me bouncing around, man. I kind of became like a utility lineman. So I played every position in the O-line. I played left tackle, right guard, left guard, center. I played it all. And they pretty much used to always just kind of plug me in to where like the weakness was. So if we had a certain spot in the O-line where other guys were better and there was one true glaring weakness, then it was, hey, put Derek there, he'll make it right type of thing. So I had a pretty good college career. I ended up going into my senior year. I was actually rated like the number 2 senior offensive guard going into my senior season. And then things just kind of didn't, play out the way it was supposed to. I was getting like pre-draft projections. I was supposed to be like a second round pick, stuff like that. So I'm, heads getting big. I'm thinking I'm gonna be an NFL superstar type of stuff, and things just, didn't pan out that way. But I still got the opportunity to end up going undrafted. Bounced around for about 3.5 years with a couple teams, just didn't materialize, and then I made my way up to Canada and kind of made a name for myself.
Yeah. So what was the decision behind going to Canada? Was it like, hey, let me just give this a try and see what happens? I mean, some players, especially in the United States, like they'll bounce around a couple NFL teams and then they're like, that's it. Like we don't see, not everybody automatically goes to Canada to play in the
Right.
CFL. So why did you kind of make that jump?
It was a last ditch effort, man. I love playing the game. I wanted to do it for a living and experience and kind of get a chance to really show people what I could do. Right. I've always felt like I got the short end of the stick in my time in NFL when I would always be outperforming guys, but I just never got the opportunity for the other political reasons why, rosters, veterans, money, that type of stuff. Right. So I knew I was talented. I knew I was good enough to play pro football. I just was looking for an opportunity. Right. And the CFL just came like a last ditch for me. I had just finished a stint playing arena ball. And I had a few NFL workouts. Nothing turned into a contract. So the NFL thing was looking pretty grim, right? So I actually had a good buddy. My best friend from college played in Canada. He was an offensive lineman too. His name was Andre Douglas. He played in Winnipeg for a couple of years. He used to always like him, and then I had another teammate too named Devin Tyler, both of them O-linemen. They used to always like be in my ear, like, "Yo, bro, you should go up to Canada. Like, you'll kill it up there. You'll be really good." And I was always like every other American player, like, nah, I don't want to go to Canada. I want to, NFL or bust type of thing. So finally, after I did the arena thing and I knew I didn't want to do that again, it was just kind of figuring out, where's my last opportunity that I could play football and make a name for myself. Right. So, I hit up my agent at the time, told him, hey, you got any connects in Canada, possibly somebody that might want to bring me in. It was in the middle of the 2015 season. Calgary had a bunch of injuries on their O-line, and they were looking for O-linemen to come in to see like what materialized. And they, ended up watching some of my NFL preseason games, like what they saw, brought me in, gave me the opportunity to play tackle again, which I hadn't played since college. And got a chance to start the very next week, and the rest was history.
Yeah. So, I mean, then you go in there, you were all-star, you won a Grey Cup, all this stuff. And then the XFL starts to come around. And in the beginning of the XFL, your name wasn't out there, but then you kind of joined you were on Team 9 for a stint there and then moved to the New York Guardians. Like, how did that all work out? Well, first, like, what was your reaction when you heard about the XFL coming? And let's talk about the Vince McMahon era and Oliver Luck. What was your thoughts there, playing in Canada and having a successful career in Canada? But then this XFL comes around.
Yeah. So essentially, after the 2019 season in Canada, I was hitting free agency, thinking I was, going to be, big fish, small pond type of situation like I was in a couple years before that. Coming off of 2 all-star seasons, thinking, I was going to have, some options to still continue my career. And teams just wasn't really trying to touch me for whatever reasons. Either be price range or how they were trying to figure out their roster. Some teams were telling me they didn't want to sign any O-line free agents. And again, too, in Canada, it's only 9 teams, right? It's not really many opportunities to, like you would get in the NFL where you got 30-something teams where, you're going to find one place that's probably give you a shot, right? So nobody was really trying to touch me at the time. And I just didn't want to sit around at home, man. I needed to, play. I needed to, football was my livelihood. That's how I pay for all my, necessities and took care of my family. So I just, in my mind, when it didn't materialize, it was like, okay, like I did with Canada. Well, what's out there? Luckily, the XFL was going. I knew a lot of guys who played in the AAF and the XFL, and just kind of asking them. Another one of my best friends was a player in the XFL, Evan Rodriguez. He played with the Seattle Dragons. So I knew guys that were in the league. I knew guys that were doing it, and I think it was actually one previous CFL All-Star and SJ Green who did it, right? So when I saw he did it, it was kind of like, okay, let me see what's there. And luckily, my agent had a connection with the player development guy, Eric Galco, at the time.
Yep.
had a conversation with Eric. Eric remembered me from my college days. So he was like, "Oh, Derek wants to come play. Oh yeah, for sure. Like, we'll find a space. We'll find a spot for him." And at the time, I think after the first 2 weeks of the season, it was every new acquisition by the league had to go to Team 9 first, just to kind of get themselves prepped for live football. It was like kind of like experimental thing where their thing was, all right, instead of bringing a guy off the street and sending him straight to the team and then possibly risking injury, well, let's send him somewhere to kind of be like a pre-camp in a sense, because he didn't do training camp. It's kind of like a pre-camp, and send him to a place where he could just get back into the swing of a football practice, get back into the grind of lifting and doing all the stuff that you do during football season. And then pretty much Team 9 was like a free agent team. So any team, if they saw somebody on the Team 9 that they wanted to come and play, they could just pluck them off of Team 9, right? So and you had to be on Team 9 in order to sign with an XFL team. Like that was the thing. You couldn't sign dudes off the street. You had to the league had to bring dudes into Team 9, and then teams had to pluck dudes off of Team 9. That's how it worked. So that's why I had to go to Team 9 first. When I first joined the league, I was there for maybe 4 or 5 days before the I think it was like 4 or 5 teams put in a claim for me. And I think the teams that really wanted me was Seattle. I spoke to Seattle. I don't think I remember speaking to anybody from New York, but I remember speaking to Seattle, and it was another team. I can't remember. I think it was Tampa. And then they were trying to get me to come in. I guess how it worked was whoever had the worst record at the time had first dibs, or whoever put the claim in. So when the claim was put in for me, New York was the team that was struggling early in the year, didn't have any wins, still trying to find their identity, right? So I ended up going to New York, which was a blessing in disguise because I'm from New York, like you said, like we said, I'm from New York. I got a chance to go play ball right in my backyard and be close to family, go home and see my family, my mom, dad, sisters every day. So it was fun, man. I enjoyed it, man. It was one of those opportunities where I didn't see it coming, but when it did come, it was like a blessing in disguise. It got me a chance to get back home, get back around my surroundings, get a chance to play pro football in my backyard and have, all my family and friends come and see me. Unfortunately, COVID cut everything short before we could really kind of see it hit full steam and become what it could have became. But I think that's why it still has a chance to still be in existence, because I think those 5 weeks really showed people the opportunity of what spring football can do if done properly.
Yeah. Now, what was your reaction did you feel like the league was organized? How would you compare the XFL, even though you were there for a very short time, with the CFL as far as organization goes? How they treated their players, because the pay, even though CFL players sort of make more, but they also play in more games, there was how is those two things different?
I don't think it was too much different. I mean, especially too, like the XFL had the opportunity to, if there was a player that they really wanted, they had the ability to pay them whatever they wanted to pay them, right? And I think that was probably some of the stick with any football league. It's like that in the CFL too. A lot of guys are disgruntled because maybe quarterbacks or certain players may make 4, 5, 6 times more than what the normal people on the roster are going to make, right? But that's just the nature of the business, right? In the NFL, you got guys who make 40 million and guys who only make 600,000, right? So that's just how it works, right? So for me, it was more like they really saw the value in me, and they was like, hey, you know what? If you want to come and do this, we'll make it worth your time, take care of you, do the things you need to do to make you feel like a pro football player and do what you need to do. Right. So it wasn't a bad situation for me. I got a chance to kind of get in there, get treated properly. It didn't feel no different than being in the CFL to me. It's kind of that same feel, how it was structured and how it was moving. I mean, granted, it was a new startup league, so they didn't have like set up in the sense of having their own facilities, but the way they went about making sure that accommodations were there for guys to be able to do what they needed to do and get done what they needed to get done. It wasn't nothing, it wasn't nothing that I didn't experience. Again, I played arena, so arenas, how they move, it was no different than, it was kind of like a good mix of like how you move in arena, how you move in the CFL. So it wasn't nothing that I wasn't around that it didn't throw me for a loop. It was like, oh, what are they doing? Why is it like this type of thing? It's just, nobody has the money that the NFL does to have the type of amenities and resources that they have available to them, right? So as a second tier pro football player, there's certain things that you're going to have to learn to live with, right? So,
Yeah.
I think the experience I think it was great, man. Honestly, I don't have any negative things to say about it. I met some great people in terms of coaches. I met some great people in terms of players, great people in terms of, just being around the city and community and people who were becoming fans of the league. And like I said, me being from New York, a lot of people were just super excited to see me back home and be able to be a pro football player from the area that that they could see up close and personal. So it was a really good situation, man. Honestly, I wish things didn't go the way it did with COVID, because it would have been I think that next game I was going to start. We were going to play Houston. Houston was the number one team in the league.
Yeah.
And I had about, I want to say like 5,000 people asking me for tickets to come to the game, right? So like me alone, I was going to put some fans in the stands from New York because the people were just happy to see me back home. So that was the type of, environment and atmosphere that it created, right? And you got a chance to play in the NFL stadium at MetLife. It's a top-notch facility, man. Most people don't, I've been playing in pro stadiums essentially my whole football career since college. I played at the Link all in college at Temple. Got a chance to play in in the league in big stadiums, and then still my experience in other leagues, still playing in big stadiums. When I played arena, we played at the Phoenix Suns arena, so I was always used to being in big venues and being in big arenas. So I mean, it was enjoyable, man. I have nothing negative to say about what the XFL brought and what it was.
Yeah. Well, what about working with a guy like Kevin Gilbert? Now, growing up in New York, were you a Giants fan or a Jets fan?
I was a Jets fan, to be real, but my dad was a Giants fan.
Okay.
And I remember like my first football game I ever went to, live football game. My dad took me to see the Philadelphia Eagles versus the New York Giants in Philly, and that was when had Tiki Barber.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like that's when the Giants were like on their way to being like what they were, right? So.
Yeah.
I remember, being a kid and cheering for Tiki Barber. I think Tiki Barber scored like 3 touchdowns that game against the Eagles. And that's when my first introduction to Philly fans before college, when I realized how intense Philly fans are. I was like a 8-9-year-old kid getting dinged in the head with a hot dog covered in mustard because I was cheering for Tiki Barber. Like that's how intense Philly fans are.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. So that was I grew up a Jets fan, but I know definitely everybody around me was Giants. It was kind of selective, man. Some people wanted to cheer for both teams. It was like it's a New York thing. New York has so much pride in everything that we do, and especially in our sports teams, like it's always going to be a mix. You're going to see some people now. You got Knicks, you got Brooklyn Nets fans, you got Yankees fans, you got Mets fans, you got Islanders fans, you got Rangers fans. Like we have so many choices for who we want to root for. It's kind of like it's a dealer's choice. So but I grew up a Jets fan.
So working with Kevin Gilbride, though, won a Super Bowl with the Giants. How is that working with him? As far, talking about a top echelon offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
What was it like working with him?
I love working with Coach Gilbert. I actually, his son was a coach at Temple when I was there.
Oh.
So I actually played for his son, Kevin Gilbert Jr. And I knew a lot about him just, from his son talking about him. And that was when he was with the Giants and stuff like that. So I remember first time, Coach Gilbert walked up to me to speak to me, and I kind of let him know, like, hey, I know your son. I play for your son at Temple. And he was like, oh, wow, really? Like, that's small world, right? That's really football. Football is really a small world. It's not as big as people think it is. So,
yeah.
But I loved him, man. Personality wise, he's a player's coach, man. He's one of those guys where he's not going to hoorah. He's not going to scream. He's gonna treat you like a pro. He's gonna treat you like a grown man. He's gonna expect you to walk in the building every day and do your job to the best of your ability, right? So I had no problem with adjusting to him and his staff. I mean, they treated me really well. They were super excited about having me. Even after my first day of practice, they were pretty much sold, like, yeah, this guy's a baller, man. We're gonna figure out a way to get him on the field, type of thing. So that's always the coaches that guys love to play for, man. Guys who can see the talent in a guy and recognize what he can bring to the table and give him that opportunity to do so, right? So it was fun, man. I enjoyed it. I think it was a great experience being around coaches who are Super Bowl winning coaches and have that type of upper echelon resume that you can learn some things, man. I'm a firm believer in, never, regardless of how old you are, you can always learn new tricks. So it was fun to be around.
Oh, so then you have the XFL kind of comes to a close, and now what was your reaction when you heard, because you had still hadn't signed with Edmonton just yet, because you had, so the bankruptcy went through, and then The Rock and Danny Garcia and Redbird Capital purchased the XFL. What was your reaction when you heard that news?
I was happy. I was happy because I feel like there's so many football players out here that don't get the opportunity to get a chance to play and do what they love, right? So I feel like for the amount of bodies that there are available to play, it's not enough job opportunities, right? So another league being able to provide guys the opportunity to get the film, get the exposure, and work on their craft and give them some type of springboard to get to where they ultimately want to get to, or realize that, at least they gave it their best shot and they realize, hey, maybe this is not in the cards for me in my future, right? So let me find something else. So I was excited. I was happy it was coming back. I was bummed out when it went down, to be honest. Like I thought it was really good. I thought it was going to create some great competition. I thought it was going to, especially with those second tier leagues. And I thought, especially for the American guys, man, having the option to play in another league in the States outside of the NFL was going to be big. So, because a lot of guys just really don't want to go to Canada. A lot of guys don't want to have to go up there and play 2 years and hope that the film translates to that's another thing too. A lot of people don't realize NFL scouts are really hard on CFL film when it comes to how they want to translate it to their game, right? Because the CFL game has different nuances than American game. And sometimes American coaches and front personnel, they can't get past the 12 men on the field. They can't get past the wide field. They can't get past the motions, right? They can't get past the running back only having 12, 15 carries a game, right? So they can't see the bigger picture in the sense of how it relate. For them, it's kind of like it has to be cookie cutter, right? So that's why you see so many former XFL guys signing in the NFL, right? Because to them, that they played the game that they're going to play in the league, right? So that to them, they can see the translation, right? So that's really why I was so excited about the league, and where you can have stories like a guy like a PJ Walker or a Jordan Tamu, or those types of stories, right? Or even the safety in St. Louis who got drafted by the Panthers, right? That was the type of opportunities that the XFL was creating that I felt like was sorely needed in the football community. So for hopefully Rock and Danny and them, that they're taking their time with putting it together, which is a good thing, because I think with this type of business venture, you got to be calculated. You got to make sure you're setting things up properly, so that way when you do get it off the ground, you won't run into too many hiccups, as if like the AAF did when they just tried to throw it out there as quick as they could and didn't really properly plan things out, right? So I'm excited to see what happens of it. I thought it would be a good thing if the XFL and the CFL actually found a way to kind of merge up and do some things. But I guess apparently they decided against it, right? So it's cool. It's great. I mean, there's enough room for both leagues to be able to do what they need to do. So I'm just happy that there's another place for guys to have an opportunity to play.
Yeah. So what was your reaction when you heard then all of a sudden the news about these two leagues that you played in? Because you're one of the few players that could actually say they played in both, that they were talking together. So what was your reaction when you heard that? Were you like, this is a good thing, this is bad?
I thought it was good. I thought it was a great idea. I thought it was something that could have turned into, if they did it properly and they found a way to make it work. I mean, another big league next to the NFL probably won't compete with the NFL in a sense. I think NFL has kind of put themselves in a stratosphere that's kind of unreachable, right? But there is room to be able to be right below it, right? To be able to be essentially what MLS is to the world FIFA, right? So I thought that it would have been a good idea to do it. I thought that there was ways to make it work and figure it out. Again, I think the biggest hurdle with getting past was people wanting to not lose the significance of what Canadian football was, right? And the biggest significance to me was the fact that they have to have a requirement to have Canadian players, right? So I don't think they wanted to lose. They didn't want to lose that aspect of being able to have younger grassroots people have that opportunity to feel like there's a league built for them that they can go play in, right? Even though half of the league is made up of American players and most of the stars that you hear about are American players, right? So it's just one of those things, man. It would have been a good idea to explore. venture to figure out in some way, shape, or form, whatever they would have came up with. I think the long term benefit of it should have outweighed the short term, but I ain't in those positions to make those calls. So I mean, they decided to go in a different direction.
Yeah. And then you go and you sign with the Edmonton Elks. And I heard you on Rod Peterson kind of talking about that, about your status there. So I guess why don't you give fans, so our show is basically XFL geared, but these guys are really going to get into the CFL because I think there's a market for fans who want to watch something other than the NFL and college football. Right. So I still think fans, even though there's not that connection, they're still going to watch the CFL this year. So what's your status with Edmonton? You had recently said that you wanted to be traded. Can you give a kind of status update of where you're at in the CFL?
I mean, currently I'm not playing. I mean, I'm not in training camp. I'm not there. Trying to be a part of the team, and that's just simple the business side of things, right? So what a lot of people fail to realize is that as a pro football player, you got to start thinking outside the box, outside of your love and passion for the game, and just being able to put a helmet and shoulder pads on and tell somebody that you're a pro football player, right? Because now for me, I'm a young family man. I have 2 children. I just bought a new home. I have responsibilities that I need to take care of. That doesn't care if the coach wants to play me this week or not, or doesn't care if I'm in one country or another, or doesn't care that, that I just want to be able to play football, right? Those things that are minuscule now in the sense of the grand picture for my life and what's occurring in it. So I just wanted to be in a situation where I felt respected, where I felt appreciated, where I felt like they really wanted me there. And I just felt like after the initial wow of the situation, I just didn't like what was transpiring. I didn't like the direction things was going. I didn't like what was going on. I was being told one thing and something else was being done. And then when I would ask about why this was being done, I would get some answer about, not to worry about it, or just, that type of thing. And it's like, no, I've been around long enough, and I've been around a lot of situations that I've seen, it's cookie cutter. There's nothing that you haven't seen. If you've been around long enough, you've seen pretty much every scenario, right? So I know how to think outside the box and think outside the lines and look at a situation and know that it's not just for face value. There's something much deeper going on, right? So I didn't feel comfortable with putting myself in that situation. And regardless of what I tried to do to make myself comfortable with the situation, it just wasn't. It wasn't comfortable for my family. It wasn't comfortable for me. And I don't know, whatever agenda the team had, I just wasn't comfortable with it. So I just decided to step away. Essentially I ended up, retiring, even though not officially, I still want to play, but I had to retire because that was what I was essentially forced to do. So, that's really what it is. I'm just trying to find a way to, just remove myself from the situation so that it's not a burden to me. It's not a burden to them. But for some reason, I'm being held on to against my will for whatever reason. So I don't see the logic in it, but I mean, that's just what the situation is. So I'm just trying to get it figured out so that way I can at least have the freedom to at least go out on my own terms the way I wanted to, or continue playing if the opportunity is there. So that's just what the situation is.
So Edmonton, so there's no chance that you would play with Edmonton this year if there was some injuries happening or something like that, and they were saying, hey, well, I mean, my biggest thing is I have, it's not a money thing. It's not like I want more money or anything like that. It's not a money thing. So if that's what people are thinking, that's not what it is. My situation is more catered to, I just wanted the language in the contract changed because the language that I was told was supposed to be in there wasn't the same for everybody, right? And that's what I was told. So when I found out that it wasn't the same for everybody, then it was more like, okay, well, why are you wording my stuff like this and you're not wording the next person's stuff like this? So what exactly is going on here type of thing. So, I don't think they're accustomed to most guys doing that. So that's why I think it became such a big deal, because most guys are just, for lack of better terms, shut up and play, right? I'm not a shut up and play kind of guy, man. I feel like I didn't go to college for no reason to get my education to be treated like I'm not smart enough to understand what's being done to me or what's being done around me, right? So I take offense to that. So that's why I'm really I'm not excited about
joining the team or playing with them, because I just don't feel like it's a situation that's going to be very good for me, regardless of what's being told to me. I'm not seeing it. So, it's what my mom always told me growing up, man. Don't believe people's words, believe their actions. So that's how I'm moving.
So if this season plays out, then what would your status be next year in the CFL? Like, how would that work?
I mean, as far as it goes contractually, I'm still under contract with Edmonton until the end of the 2022 season. So right now, I think that's what their logic is, to hold on to my rights to see if I change my mind and come up and play. But then again, if I do come up and play, the contract that I have doesn't hold them accountable for anything. So they can say, yeah, we want you here, and then decide the next week, oh, we don't want you here, and then do essentially what I'm already asking them to do and let me go, right? So that's my logic, in the sense of there's nothing tying you to me. There's really nothing tying me to you outside of me signing this deal. If I don't want to play for the deal, then what is the point of holding on to me for whatever reason, right? Unless you think that you're getting a competitive advantage by not making me available to other teams, then I mean that's a weird competitive advantage to me. But that's I like I said, I'm not in those positions to make those choices, man.
Right.
I just play football. So and I'm just hoping for the opportunity to play football at a place that's going to appreciate me and really want me there and show me that.
Well, what if you've heard, of course, of the USFL coming back, and Kevin Gilbert was part of the USFL. If the USFL came calling for the 2022 season, would that be a phone call that you would take? I mean, there's nothing that the CFL could do about it if you wanted to play in the USFL.
Yeah, I don't really know. I think there's something in CFL contracts to say, like, if you're under contract, you can't sign another one somewhere else. Because I did get a call from the Guardians staff, because they were doing the other league, the spring league. They was doing
TSL?
that.
You talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I got a call from them to come and do that. But again, too, my thing is what I tell everybody, man. It has to make sense for me to be able to take care of my family, right? So I'm not in the business of playing for free right now, playing for fun. I'm in the business of playing to take care of my loved ones. So gotcha. If it's an opportunity to be able to do that, then yeah, sure, I would definitely consider it.
Gotcha. And then so now that you kind of in this limbo, I guess, why don't you tell people what you've got planned coming up as far as your podcasts go, and doing some stuff with us on CFL News Hub?
Yeah, man, I went to college for broadcast journalism, so this is kind of like my passion. This is stuff that I've always really been into, even since I was a kid. So just trying to make use of the time that I have, right? Try to help create a resume for myself. To see if I could find my way, find a crack in the door in the media world, and get myself in there and start working and doing that type of stuff. As after football, life. So just right now, just at home working, trying to come up with ways to create some content to kind of diversify myself, and kind of put me somewhere where people can view me as someone in the future that they would want to have part of their network, or whatever it may be, right? So media has always been my true passion. Has always been the career that I really wanted to do for the majority of my life outside of playing football. So I'm just trying to find ways to just, like I said, build my portfolio and get my name out there, and get people to see if people really want to listen to what I have to say.
So you were talking about two podcasts that you were interested in, and one was kind of a player focused on the offensive line play, and another one was just kind of general. Is that kind of where you think you're taking things?
Yeah, right now, I'm in the process of starting a new show. I feel like, especially in the CFL or like second tier football leagues, offensive line play doesn't get the attention that I think it deserves. And that's always one of the positions in football. I feel like you need guys who know what they're doing and know how to play well and know how to play as a unit, right? So I just want to be able to impart some of the knowledge that I have on a grand scale, to kind of talk the game of football with guys who have played it, talk the game of football, and put material out there to just highlight those unsung heroes, in a sense, right? So I feel like offensive line guys don't get enough love, they don't get enough attention, and I want to find a way to make it to where you look at your starting left guard the same way you look at your X or Y receiver, right? Or your corner and your safety, right? I want them to get the same type of love and appreciation that those guys get from the media on a day-to-day basis. So I'm just trying to find ways to just put that out there. And then I had a podcast that I started a couple years ago that I've been on and off with called Insights from the Locker Room, where I just kind of bring in guys from different sports that I've known, guys that I've trained with in the past, guys that I play baseball and soccer and hockey and all these different types of sports, and just bring them in there to kind of give a inside look to what life is like in the locker room with those types of athletes, and what are some of the things they like to do, and what are some of the trials and tribulations that you got to go through to play certain sports, or just kind of give people who've gone through that journey of chasing this dream that we've had since we were kids the chance to kind of just put this story out there.
That sounds good stuff. I'm definitely excited for you to help be part of the CFL News Hub, and we can help promote your podcast out there. Final question. Who is going to win the Grey Cup this year?
Honestly, I think I would say my favorite, and not to be cliche, but I think Hamilton is probably the favorite to win it, especially because it's a home Grey Cup. And the only thing is, not many teams have played in a Grey Cup at home, right? So that's the one thing. I think the last team to do it was Saskatchewan in like 2013, right? So playing in a home Grey Cup is definitely going to be a challenge, especially. I know what that pressure is like, because that's what we went through in Calgary in 2019, because the Grey Cup was in Calgary. So everybody was, we were the favorite team. Everybody expected us to, push for a Grey Cup date at home. And we fell a game short of it. Right. So that's that pressure that comes with a team is definitely something to look out for. I think structurally wise, they brought back the same team that played in the Grey Cup the previous season that was played. So of course you would look at them as the favorite. So I would probably say Hamilton, but dark horse, I would either go with the Saskatchewan Roughriders or the Montreal Alouettes.
Oh,
now, granted, I think Montreal is a very, very sneaky team, especially too now, because you don't hear a lot of news coming out of Montreal in the sense of their camp. Everything, all that information is really tight knit right now, right? The only thing you're hearing about is just whatever cuts they made, but in the sense of like practice and what's going on with players and stuff like that, you're not really hearing too much noise and hoopla out of Montreal, right? And I think there's a reason for that. I think they understand that they have a unique opportunity to be able to, push for a Grey Cup, especially in the East Division. I think they're definitely a team that can push Hamilton, that can push Toronto. But if I had to pick someone out of the box that no one's thinking about, I think I would go with the Montreal Alouettes.
Oh, interesting pick. All right, well, Derek Dennis, thanks. I appreciate you being on the show. And where can people find you, aside from when you get your podcast out? Where can people find you on social media?
So you can find me on Twitter at 6bonecrusher3. You can find me on Instagram at 6bonecrusher4. You can find me on Facebook. I have a fan page, Derek Bonecrusher Dennis fan page on Facebook. I have a regular page on Facebook. I'm pretty accessible. Most people know I go back and forth with any and everybody, man. I feel like fan engagement is something that a lot of players lack because they're too scared to say something that they think is going to get them in trouble, or they just don't want to make themselves look a certain way. I'm a typical New Yorker, man. I really don't care, man.
I'm right there with you.
I'm gonna do what I want. I'm gonna say what I want, and nobody's really gonna waver me, right? And I feel like I do it in a good enough way to make it playful, make it fun, even when it's just banter back and forth with a random bot on Twitter or something, right? Is in my way. I'm creating a lane for myself to make people want to see what I'm talking about, see what I'm saying, or be witty enough to where people go, you know what, that guy, that's pretty funny what he said back to that fan, even though that fan was kind of ragging on him, right? That's the lane that I'm in, right? So, it's just always the kind of big brand picture, right? Built into the grand picture of it. So you can find me on any social media, hit me up. I think part of my new podcast show, I'm going to start doing like weekly live streams, and they'll be broadcasted over all my social media platforms. So once I stream live, you'll see it over, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I think I'm in the process of, I'm going to try to create a YouTube page as well. Just trying to get out there and just pump some content out and just kind of just throw my hat in the ring.
All right, great. All right, Derek, thanks so much for being on the show.
All right, man. Appreciate you having me.
Sure.